Hey scholars, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this new video. And in this video I will be discussing the new upcoming cosmic mythic monster that is Henritch. Now Henrich's moveset just leaked a couple of days ago and I didn't have the time to make this long video, so I'm making it today. Also, I have made another video on Henritch on how you can obtain him as a free-to-play player, so be sure to check that out so that you know exactly how you can get this monster. Now having said that, let me jump right back into this video. And this video we have Henritch. Now as for the trait of Henritch, that has not been revealed as of yet. We'll be knowing that when it's released, and I'll be telling you guys in a pinned comment if I'm able to do so. Also, I'll be leaving the link of the video that I just made about Henritch on how to get him in the pinned comment as well, and we'll be leaving a card above so you guys can go and check that out. Now let's just go into the moveset, which is support the indies that deals low thunder damage, also applies AoE shock, so that is a good move to have that can counter extra turn monsters. So if you are going against extra turn monsters on the enemy team, consider running this move. Now this monster is generally a deny monster and I would not run this on a deny monster because there are other monsters that can do the trick as well. You just have to be careful on that. Now this could come in handy against Lindworm if he is running the turn transfer skill, so you might want to go and run this before he turn transfers, and that way the turn transfer will be lost and you guys will have a chance to attack. The next move is Hot Coffee Sir that deals moderate fire damage to one enemy, applies burn and daze to one enemy, requires a cooldown. Now this skill is not that great, although it applies a DOT and is also single target. You could use this, but I wish that this was a zero cooldown skill because that could really help along those cooldown activations, because a lot of cooldown activation monsters are out there. That is Lindworm, Henritch himself, which you'll get to know later on in the video, and obviously there are other monsters that activate cooldowns like Kodama. Then the next move is Rolling Like a Hedgehog that deals low thunder damage to all enemies, applies AoE daze. Now I kind of like this AoE daze because after you have done your main deny skill, you are kind of empty as to what to do, and AoE daze is a great way to do. Following it up with the AoE cooldown activation, you can run this skill and AoE daze the entire enemy team. In case they are running low cooldown skills like 1 cooldown or something like 0 cooldown skills, the daze will really help you protect yourselves from some of those attacks, because daze reduces the enemy team's accuracy by 25%, which is great. Couple them up with a tough or hardened trait and the attack has a very low chance of landing on you. Then the next move is Good Morning Peeps that deals moderate thunder damage to one enemy, applies a shock to one enemy. Now I'm guessing this is a zero cooldown skill. This could come in handy when you are going up against, like I said, extra turn monsters. Now if this is zero cooldown and you just want to target one monster, this could be your go-to move. Then the next move is 1 versus 1 reschedule that deals low special damage, activates all cooldowns. That is an amazing move. Like I said, this is the star of this monster's skills, and yeah, this is an amazing skill that activates all of the cooldowns. What you have to be careful here is against those monsters that have cooldown protections, or those monsters that have zero cooldown moves. Now as you go and progress up the leagues, especially in Legend 33 and above, you will encounter monsters with zero cooldown skills. Now the players are very smart there and they have those zero cooldown skills handy so that they do not miss a turn in case their cooldowns activated. And they also have monsters that have cooldown activation protection, so be sure to be very careful when running this move. Now the next move is Battleground Killer that deals moderate water damage to one enemy, applies a freeze twice to one enemy, requires a cooldown. This is also a very good move. The reason being that it applies a freeze twice to one enemy, and that will increase the chances of that freeze landing. In case you miss once, there will be no chance that you are missing it again, so that is a pretty good deny move. Now this move could have been better if this was an AoE, but that would make this monster a bit too overpowered, so this is nice that it is a single target attack. Then the next move is lot less force that applies burn to one enemy, applies shock and freeze to one enemy, requires cooldown. Now this basically combines all of the skills that we encountered, and I personally like this a lot. And yeah, you can apply burn, you can apply shock, you can apply freeze to one enemy, which is pretty nice, so you might want to consider running that as well. Then the next move is Yes that deals moderate special damage to one enemy, activates all cooldowns on one enemy. Now instead of running this single cooldown skill, I would rather go with the freeze skill, because that way you have 2 denies on your hand basically, so that you are able to get rid of those 0 cooldown skills once you have done your cooldown activation. doing cooldown activation does not really make sense. Then we have the special. Now this is in Spanish, so excuse me if I do not pronounce this correctly. That is No Bueno Senor, that deals moderate thunder damage to all enemies, activates all cooldowns on all enemies, applies mega freeze and burn to all enemies. Now specials are overpowered, and I love this special that it applies mega freeze and also applies burn and activates all cooldowns. This is a good special. Then we have Henrich's description. So basically, like I said, he is a controller with artifact trait and cooldown activation skills. Okay, so this is new. I thought that we did not have the trait, but excuse me, we in fact do have the trait. That is the artifact trait, and that is a pretty awesome trait to have. But it also has its disadvantages because you cannot be buffed, since artifact monsters cannot be buffed or they cannot be controlled as well. I love the artifact trait because this is basically an immune to control skill. Now the only other skill that artifact monsters are vulnerable to is obviously skills that activate cooldown, so you might want to run 0 cooldown skills on this monster, so that, like I said, be intelligent, and even if your cooldowns activated, you have a skill on your arsenals that you can destroy the enemies with. Now as for the runes of this monster, I would personally recommend 3 speed runes because this monster is an overall denier, and I would like to see him get turns again and again and again in the turn order. So yeah, 3 speed runes would be very nice for this monster. Now the moves that I would recommend are obviously 1 0 cooldown move. Now as you can see, I do not have the cooldowns in front of me, so one spot will be reserved for a 0 cooldown move. I do not know what that will be right now, so let's just skip one spot, and I'll be recommending 3 moves that you definitely have to run. So the first move is the 1 versus 1 reschedule that deals low special damage, activates all cooldowns on all enemies. That is basically the star, like I said. And then the next move that I would recommend is Battleground Killer, that deals moderate water damage and applies freeze twice, or you could substitute it with Bloodless Force. It applies burn, applies shock, and applies freeze to one enemy. And the third skill that I would recommend would be that AoE day skill. Now the 4th spot you should reserve for the 0 cooldown skill because this monster is an artifact monster, and artifact monsters are usually very vulnerable to cooldown activation, and there are a lot of monsters in the cosmic mythic category that have cooldown activations, namely Kodama and this monster Henrich and Lindworm, so you might want to be careful. And I think the upcoming new monster Manipulate, which I'll be talking in a later video, will also have cooldown activations and possessions, so you might want to be careful of being cooldowns activated in the future. So having said all of that, that is the end of the video. I'll be seeing you in the very next one. Until then, peace out.